On this Sunday before Labor Day, let us contemplate work. Indeed, let us praise work. Work can give human life purpose and boundaries and meaning. Work can be ennobling, uplifting, and enriching. Work can even form, whether consciously or unconsciously, an important part of our identities. This can be both a good thing and a bad thing. I remember that soon after my father retired from his 36 years of work in the organized labor movement, my mother asked me out to lunch with her. Over the clink of glasses and the murmured conversations in the crowded restaurant, my mother leaned across the table and said theatrically to me, "I think your father's losing his mind." Well, after I picked my jaw up off the table, I was able to get from my mother the real cause of her concern. And it was that without his work, my father felt aimless, purposeless, out of sorts. If he were not Barney Morel, the AFL-CIO sub-district director, then who was he? And what was he supposed to do with the rest of his life? In his confusion and discomfort, my father was driving my mother crazy. He eventually worked through it. We collaborated together on an oral history of his life in the labor movement. And some of you have heard about that in previous sermons I've preached about my father. And soon after we finished the oral history, he took up golf. And soon my mother had other complaints about my dad, but it wasn't about whether he was losing his mind. Many people, both women and men, have had similar experiences after leaving a long-time job, whether voluntarily through retirement or against their will by being fired or laid off or the business closing. It is no coincidence that many of our present day surnames, names like Shoemaker, Smith, Wright, Wheeler, Baker, Ferry, Farmer, and even Hindu names like Gandhi, which means grocer, come from the occupation of one of our ancestors. So much of who we are, for both good and ill, is tied up in our work. And it is often hard to extract the core of ourselves from what it is that we do. Ministers are not immune from such concerns. Years ago, there was a discussion spanning several days on the UU Ministers online chat group about the difference between doing ministry and being a minister. Were they the same thing? Was there a real distinction to be made in saying, I am a minister, or saying ministry is what I do, but it's not who I am? No consensus was reached on these questions, but there were days of fruitful and interesting exchanges. You may be interested to know that I came down on the side of being a minister, that most of the time I feel that ministry is who I am and not necessarily what I do. And this has been made even more clear to me now that I'm mostly, but not all the way, retired. I still am a minister. If we're going to identify so strongly with what we do, then it is important for us to be involved in work worth doing, or what the Buddha called right livelihood. If our work demeans human dignity, if our work puts ourselves or others in danger, if our work is based in faulty ethics or a lack of connection to other human beings or to the earth, or even if we are simply unsuited for the work we are doing, then we may find our spiritual and emotional unease making itself felt both physically and psychically. We may experience loss of sleep or recurring nightmares or other physical symptoms that appear without apparent clinical cause. Now, I don't know about this reality just because I read it somewhere, although the phenomenon is well documented. I know this is true because it happened to me. Back in the early 1980s, soon after I had joined First UU Church in New Orleans, when I was a store manager for the Laura Ashley Company, a job, by the way, I adored and that I had avidly pursued, two things started happening. First, I had nightmares several times a week. And then on my days off, I developed a mysterious skin rash on my arms that cleared up when I wasn't at work. I sought the advice of a dermatologist and I flunked every skin allergy test he put me through. I was not allergic to anything in particular. I just kept getting this rash. His diagnosis was urticaria, which, in case you don't know, that in layman's terms, that is a red rash that the doctor can't figure out, okay? Basically, urticaria just means red rash. Thanks, I knew I had that. When I quit retailing in 1985, it was mostly because I realized my heart wasn't in it, but my body knew that before my mind did. I was meant for something else, only I didn't know what it was yet. My deeper involvement with my new free time in my church first drew me to become the church's professional administrator and later still to the UU ministry. And by the way, I never got that rash again. I finally found what I was supposed to be when I grew up, and I joyfully embraced the life it offered me, with all of its privileges, hardships, life changes, growth experiences, mostly low pay and all. It's funny, when I was first ordained, a friend of mine found this bumper sticker in a Baptist bookstore and bought it for me. The bumper sticker said, "I like this job so much, I would do it for nothing." And then in much smaller type underneath that, it said, "Unfortunately, I think they know that." Needless to say, I never put that bumper sticker on my car, but I think I still have it somewhere. Back in those days, I didn't know about Rumi, the Sufi mystic and poet, but unconsciously, I was following one of his most compelling directives. Let yourself be drawn by the pull of what you really love. Let's do that again. Let yourself be drawn by the pull of what you really love. Now, not all of us have the security and the luxury of being able to drop everything and follow Rumi's urging. Not all of us are able to retire early from a long-time job and take up an entirely new career, as my friend and former parishioner did, becoming a UU minister after a successful career as a college professor, or as a predecessor of mine in ministry did, going the opposite way, retiring as a UU minister and joining the Peace Corps. Many of us are caught in jobs that we keep in order to pay our bills and can't afford to think whether or not we feel fulfilled. Indeed, some of us has jobs that don't even pay all our bills. Some of us have jobs we cannot leave, but where we are mistreated. Others of us, while we might be making more money and may not be doing actual drudgery, still feel stuck and do not see a clear way toward doing some kind of ideal work that we would love while actually being paid a living wage. Maybe we should take a step back and think in a new way. If we cannot, for whatever reason, do work that is what we truly love, then perhaps we can find ways to bring what we truly love to our work. We could build more meaningful relationships at our places of work. We could get into the mindfulness, the Zen of boring routine tasks. We could witness whatever faith sustains us in the way that we do our work, whatever that work is. In fact, that step back is essential for all of us. All of us can get too caught up in what we do, mistaking our work for ourselves, mistaking familiar routine for what must be done. All of us could benefit from being able to take some perspective on the work that we do. In his diaries, Leonardo da Vinci wrote, "Every now and then go away, have a little relaxation, for when you come back to your work, your judgment will be surer. Go some distance away, because then the work appears smaller and more of it can be taken in at a glance, and a lack of harmony and proportion is more readily seen." Maybe that's what Labor Day is really all about. That little relaxation we can use to sharpen our judgment, to see our problems and challenges with work in a new light, to discern for ourselves whether or not we are actually letting ourselves be drawn by the stronger pull of what we truly love. This morning, let us sing a song in praise of work worth doing, work that enriches and ennobles, work that gives our lives meaning and identity and purpose. In honor of the working women and men of this church and all around the world, and in honor of those brave union activists and members who brought us the 40-hour week, the weekend, paid vacations, and Labor Day itself, let us link ourselves and join our voices with theirs in the special hymn of working people, Solidarity Forever.